3 months after we broke up, my ex-boyfriend got engaged to someone new. He used to be so passionate about me, saying, "Stella, I love you," multiple times a day. "Stella, come back soon," or "Stella, why don't you like me yet?" But in the end, he fell for someone else. After 7 years of love, we were done. I'm finally over it. I overheard Peter joking with his friends. Older women are no fun. They act all pure, but they're like a piece of wood, no fun at all. His friends laughed. "No way, maybe it's you who's the problem." "Get lost," Peter said. "Do you think she's still some young girl?" I stood by the door, frozen, not knowing if I should go in or leave. "Excuse me," a young girl's voice came from behind. You could tell she was a beauty by her tone. Her perfume hit me hard. I've smelled that scent on Peter before. She pushed past me, went straight to Peter, sat next to him, and playfully cuddled up to him, her chest pressed against him. "Peter, do you know this lady?" she asked. "You can go." "I have things to do," Peter said, dismissively waving me off. His friends exchanged looks, enjoying the drama unfolding. I bit my lip and walked away. As I closed the door, I heard laughter explode behind me. My heart ached, and tears silently fell down my cheeks. I hadn't celebrated my birthday with him for a long time. Yet tonight was my birthday. As I walked alone, the coldness felt unbearable. So many people were around, but they were all couples, which only made my loneliness more embarrassing and absurd. Yeah, I was planning to propose to Peter tonight. I clutched the ring box in my pocket hard, the corners digging into my flesh, trying not to burst into tears on the street. When Peter was 17, he hugged me tight and said he only liked Stella, asking me to trust him just once. He was so sure, "I'll marry you when you're 22. You have to believe me." Yet when he hit the legal age for marriage, he said, "I want to start a business. Once I make big money, I'll buy you a house and bags. I'll marry you in style." But with more and more women around him, he stopped mentioning marriage. To May felt like an old piece of furniture to him, a relic of past fondness, with no flavor but too much sentiment to throw away. But I just can't wait any longer. By the time I got home, it was late at night. I tripped as I entered. Seeing what was on the floor made my heart race in panic. Clothes were scattered everywhere, showing how hasty the moment had been. The bedroom door was ajar, with embarrassing sounds coming from inside. It was the first time he'd openly brought another woman home, not bothering to keep up appearances anymore. Just one step away from telling me to leave outright. Before, I could fool myself that it was just a fling, but now, an all too familiar, dull pain started to surface in my chest. This silent suffocation over the past 2 years almost drowned me. The countless lipstick marks on his collars, the red marks on his neck, and the unfamiliar perfume. I sat in the dark, turning myself into a statue on the couch. I told myself, some things have to end. I don't know how long I sat there before the bedroom door opened. Peter came out in a bathrobe, caught off guard to see me, then frowned. "Why are you sitting here?" His disgust and disdain nearly drowned me. He used to be different. In the height of his passion, he'd wait by the door for me to come home like a big fluffy dog, fetch my slippers, ask for kisses, and question why I came home late, wondering if I didn't love him anymore. But now, even though I still love him, he's fallen for someone else. "I've got something to say to you." I held back the bitterness, ask her to leave. "Now?" he asked, his surprise seemingly genuine. "Are you kidding? I just brought her in." That nearly brought me to tears, but I held them back. "This is our home." I tried to keep my voice steady. Crying in front of him would just be humiliatingly bad. "Peter?" The sweet female voice piped up. It was the same girl from earlier. When she saw me, she first let out a surprised sound, then hugged Peter's arm, exuding a sense of challenge. "Why are you here?" I couldn't help but tremble all over. Peter glanced at me and suddenly smiled maliciously. "Why haven't you left yet?" His words were laden with insult and made dread crawl up my spine. I couldn't believe he actually said that. "Peter," the girl pouted, acting cute, "I hated it. She said, "Tell her to get lost." Peter burst out laughing, kissed her hard in front of me. "Whatever you say, honey." She proudly lifted her chin in his arms, her youthful collagen making me feel plain. "You're such a bother," she said. "Peter doesn't like you, so why can't you give it up and stop being a nuisance? Why push yourself on people like this? So young, so fearless. Just like Peter, years ago, unapologetically said he'd love me forever." I stared him down, tasting iron as I'd bitten my cheek hard enough to draw blood, but I couldn't feel the pain. Peter just cradled the girl, kissing her on the head, showing no guilt and not even sparing me a glance. The smirk on his lips, one I knew well, was the same as when he was young. When he'd corner me and teasingly nudge me with his nose, demanding, "Say you'll be my girlfriend." A boy 7 years younger than me, but with eyes that shined like a young wolf's. But now, he just laughed and kissed that girl nonchalantly, saying, "There's nothing left to say between us." "Stella, are you really not leaving?" I insisted, "Let's talk." I knew my persistence looked pathetic and ridiculous, but I just needed clarity. "Why? What did I do wrong? You used to get so annoyed." Peter shrugged, told the girl to put on her clothes. "Baby, let's go out," seeing her kills the vibe. He never looked at me again. All I got in return was the sound of the door closing. Peter and I had known each other for 7 years, loved each other for 5. The last 2 years, though, were filled with bitterness and betrayal. He once pursued me passionately, saying he'd love me forever, almost willing to give me his heart. Yet, just a few years later, he started bringing other women home, his deep affection reducing to nothing. I started packing my things. I guess keeping busy prevents overthinking. I packed my clothes and daily items, tucked away the shared sweet memories and objects. After all, someone new would probably come soon. It was wise to step aside. Everything was okay until I reached the photo wall. I saw 17-year-old Peter laughing brilliantly at me, and on the other side, there was me, freshly graduated, a bit shy but still holding his hand firmly. Back then, our eyes sparkled at each other. My heart twinged fiercely. The 17-year-old Peter said to me, "Stella, I love you, I'll always love you." His laugh, his anger, his playfulness, echoes of his voice still linger. But the love? That's long gone. He had already embarked on his new, spirited life. The one left behind was always just me. Without realizing, I had been packing until dawn. I rubbed my slightly sore back, thinking of that young girl's spirited face last night, couldn't help but mock myself. I'm 31 this year, not exactly young. Peter is only 24, at an age where he hasn't played enough yet. He's young, handsome, got into a top university, and after graduating, started a company with friends, a bona fide success story. Why would he stick around with someone like me? Honestly, I had been preparing for this day. I'm not an interesting person. Plain looking, not particularly smart, got into an ordinary college. Without any mishaps, I'd probably find a mild-mannered guy and settle down. No big dreams, no wild fantasies. But the year I graduated, my parents passed away unexpectedly, leaving me to take over the family clock shop. Over time, I grew to love the ticking sound of clock hands. It brought a sense of peace and calm. I thought I could live quietly like this forever, until I met Peter. I was 24, he was 17. From then on, my life took a sharp turn towards a heart-wrenching future. The day I moved out of Peter's place, it snowed heavily. Just like when we first met. But there was no going back for us. I scheduled a moving company to take my things to my parents' old house. Back when I was dating Peter, he held my hand, with eyes full of affection. "Stella, come live with me, I'll never let you be alone again." But now he asked, "Are you leaving or am I?" I smiled bitterly. In the end, it was my parents' home that took me in. The house hadn't been lived in for years. I didn't hire a cleaner, I tidied up slowly, bit by bit, so my mind wouldn't wander too much. By the time everything was done, the sun had set. I picked up my phone, checked it, the inbox was empty, no calls or messages from Peter. I laughed at myself, what was I still hoping for? Opening our chat, the last message I sent him was a week ago. I told him I was going to a watch exhibition, no reply. Over the years, we barely exchanged messages. Maybe 1 or 2 messages every couple of months, if that, but at dinner, I saw him typing away joyfully on his phone, smiling. After a quick meal, he'd drop his chopsticks, say, "I gotta go out." He wouldn't speak a word to me. That's when I understood. He still had this strong urge to share, brilliant ideas buzzing in his head, just not with me anymore. When I got home, I noticed the noodles I specially got up early to make for him had gone all mushy, the half-cooked egg already moldy, and the prepared food in the fridge untouched. He hadn't been home at all these past few days. When did he stop eating my breakfasts? Instinctively, I took out my phone. I'm a sentimental person, couldn't bring myself to delete the chat history. Opening the chat, my fingers automatically scrolled upwards. Like rewinding time, the further back, the more messages there were, and I slowed down. His tone getting more lively, playful. That was the younger Peter, lively, mischievous, saying countless times a day, "Stella, I love you, Stella, hurry back, Stella, I'm starving." It was as if I saw the Peter of those days standing before me. In his hoodie, jeans, vibrant as a young poplar tree. He asked, "Stella, why don't you like me yet?" I suddenly turned off the screen, an overwhelming pain rose from the depths of my heart. Where did the boy who loved me so deeply back then go? There was a little yellow cat in the shop. Peter didn't like cats, so I quietly kept it there. When I found it, it was only as big as my hand. Now it's a 14-pound giant. When it saw me, it came running to the door, acting cute to earn a treat, with a very good business attitude. I picked it up, and it purred loudly. I wanted to say, "You can come home with me now, no more being a lone cat at the shop." But before I could finish, tears uncontrollably started streaming down. I only felt a rough touch on my face, and when I snapped back to reality, I realized Bella had already licked away my tears and was looking at me a bit worriedly. I reached out and petted her head. "It's okay, you'll come home with me," I paused, telling her, "Our own home. Winter in City A doesn't come with heating." I was rubbing my hands in the store by myself. Even with the air conditioner on, the cold felt piercing, and my fingers were a bit numb. These days, everyone loves using their phones. Watches and things like that are becoming less popular, so business isn't great, but I managed to get by. Suddenly, someone walked in. Instinctively, I looked up to greet them. "Hello, may I?" The unfinished sentence got stuck in my throat. It was Peter. I never realized I could be so tongue-tied. After all, he was the man I loved for 7 years, now standing tall at the door, his presence lighting up my little watch shop. He's always been good-looking. Peter didn't make it awkward for me and walked right in, giving me a small smile. "Stella, how have you been?" It's been 3 months since I last saw him. He took a good look at me and told me, "Stella, you seem thinner." His tone was casual, like an old friend you haven't seen in a while, just catching up. But it wasn't. I've seen him when he loved me, so I know when he doesn't. I pinched myself hard under the table, struggling to act normal, and nodded at him. "Is there something you need? Can't I just drop by?" He teased me like he always did, realizing it wasn't right halfway through and swallowing his words. "I've got a watch I'd like Stella to fix." He put in front of me an exquisite lady's watch. The joy of seeing him felt like being hit with a punch. "Whose is this?" He always hated hassle. He wouldn't even drive to pick me up without excuses when I didn't have an umbrella, and now he was willing to go around finding a shop to fix a watch. Must really like whoever it belongs to. "It's my girlfriend's," he said. He couldn't think of anyone else nearby who could fix it, so I brought it to you, Stella. The tweezers slipped from my hand, clattering onto the counter loudly. "When did you get a girlfriend?" I heard myself asking. Pain twisted in me, almost suffocating, as I gripped the edge of the workbench to keep from collapsing. "Not long ago." Seeing my ready-to-cry expression, he finally said, "About 2 months. But it's only been 3 months since we broke up. Not even a proper breakup, just me left hanging like a stray dog. By the way, He smiled at me. Stella, I'm getting engaged. Won't you congratulate me? I don't know how I saw Peter off. I sat dumbfounded at my workbench, my head buzzing. He's getting married? I used to wish for a wedding with him so much, but the more I waited, the less hope I dared to hold on to. Peter's family is well off, with both parents into business. That's why they raised someone bold and daring like him. I'm 7 years older than Peter, from an average family, and both my parents passed away honestly. His parents didn't approve of me from the start. I still remember the first time I visited his family. His dignified mother looked me over with those scrutinizing eyes. You're Stella? I caught her underlying message. Did you seduce my son? Yet Peter held my hand tightly, fearless. Mom and Dad, this is the woman I love. Her name is Stella, he told them. I noticed his parents exchange a rather delicate glance before smiling politely at me. Miss Stella, welcome. But there wasn't really any welcome. At first, I'd bring gifts on holidays. I didn't have much money, so despite trying my best, the gifts were probably seen as inadequate by his parents. I could see their polite disdain. His mom would say, Miss Stella, just come over, no need to buy gifts. I didn't get it back then, still smiling earnestly. It's all right, Auntie, it's just a small gesture. Her expression turned a bit awkward. Miss Stella, our family doesn't use these, no need to waste your money, we appreciate the thought. My mouth hung open. This happened too many times. Eventually, I just stopped going. Peter used to ask me with confusion, almost a challenge, Stella, my parents are easygoing. Why can't you get along with them? His parents, being well-educated, wouldn't embarrass someone openly. But it was this kind of subtle disdain that hurt the most. The first time Peter and I fought was after his mom set him up with another girl. The door suddenly buzzed again. Instinctively, I wiped away the tears and stood. Hi, is there anything I can help you with? Anything to distract me, anything at all, please. The person paused, then smiled. Hi, my watch band broke. Can you help fix it? His voice was gentle, and I quickly wiped my face. Sure, let me take a look. When he saw my face, he paused, then reached into his pocket and handed me a handkerchief, saying nothing. I'll step out for a smoke and come back in, he said. If you could take a look before I get back, I appreciated this customer's thoughtfulness. Once I calmed down, I carefully examined the watch he brought in. It was an old mechanical watch, with faint anniversary engravings. This was bought when my parents got married, the man said, having walked back in without me noticing. The band's broken, but they can't bear to replace it. They're sentimental like that, it's important to fix it. Your parents have a wonderful relationship, I said sincerely, giving him a smile. I'll attach the band and give the whole watch a checkup. Thinking for a moment, I awkwardly added, don't worry, I'm not a shady dealer. I might not find that kind of love myself, but I can be truly happy for those who do have these rare, lifelong connections. The man was momentarily stunned but then laughed. Miss, feel free to do so. The strap is easy to fix, but when I checked the movement, I frowned. Is it hard to wind this watch regularly? Yeah, the man nodded. This watch is so old, it's tough to find parts. It's a really old piece, I said, feeling a bit troubled. How about this, give me your number, and I'll look around for parts. If I can fix it, I'll give you a call. Sounds good. He added my contact info and gave me an apologetic smile. Thank you for the trouble, Miss Stella. I genuinely enjoy these aged items, so I take extra care when repairing them. To find the original parts for this watch, I can't even tell you how many calls I made or how many people I asked. But in the end, I actually found them. I called Richard excitedly, I found them. He was just as thrilled and said he'd bring the watch over in the afternoon. As I waited, I started scrolling through short videos to kill time. One swipe down, and a video popped up that froze me in place. It was a stunning scene, a tall, handsome guy kissing a petite, beautiful girl. They truly looked like a match made in heaven. Except that was Peter. I always knew he looked great in a suit and had been pulled into countless passionate kisses against the wall under the pretense of fixing his tie. I once thought the person standing next to him would be me. He'd told me so intensely, "Stella, I love you. Please wait for me to grow up." But the grown-up him stood next to someone else. The girl he was engaged to was clearly the one he brought home that night, who arrogantly asked who I was. What did Peter tell me? A couple of months, maybe. Ridiculous. Just because I'm an ordinary person, does my love and time mean nothing? Are they just meant to be played with by so-called elites like you, summoned and dismissed at will? Thanks for the 7 years that gave me nothing but empty joy. Peter, karma will come for you. I kept watching, feeling something hit the back of my hand. It was tears. I hadn't realized when I started crying so hard. Why are you always crying when you see him, Miss Stella? Richard's voice broke the silence, with a hint of a sigh. Sorry. I'm sorry. I scrambled to my feet, awkwardly reaching to wipe my tears, only to see Richard leaning down toward me. He gently wiped away my tears himself. I was startled, retreating several steps. What are you doing? Apologies for the offense, Richard smiled apologetically. You just looked so much like a red-eyed rabbit I had as a child when you cried. My tears were still clinging to my eyelashes, and I was completely confused. He couldn't help but laugh again. Right now, you really look like a frightened rabbit. But his proximity had been unsettlingly close enough to make me uneasy. I cautiously retreated several more steps until I felt a safe distance. Then I spoke. Mr. Richard, please mind your manners. My apologies. He raised both hands, showing he meant no harm. I'll be more mindful. The watch? He placed it on the counter, sliding it over with his fingers. I steadied myself and took the watch. I heard Richard chuckle above me. Don't rush. Finally finished assembling, I gave a small cheer. Mr. Richard, you can. Probably from being bent over too long and a bit lacking oxygen, I stood up and everything went black for a moment, the world spinning around me. Richard quickly caught me just as the door curtain rustled, and a familiar voice cut through the air. Stella. I froze. Why is he here? Then, his voice came with evident anger. What are you doing? That's when I realized just how ambiguous the situation with Richard looked, hastily standing up straight. When I saw who it was, a chill ran up my spine, leaving me rigid. He was still wearing the clothes from the engagement party. What are you doing here? I tried to keep calm, but my nails dug deeply into my palms. Stella, don't cry. He's not worth your tears. He had probably never been treated so coldly by me before. Peter's beautiful eyes showed a moment of confusion, but then anger took over. Who is he? He demanded, face shadowed with storm clouds. All I could feel was amusement. Why should I have to explain? It's like kicking a stray dog and expecting it to wag its tail when it sees you again. Not biting back is already merciful. It's none of your business. Stella. Peter was furious. How can you hang out with such questionable people? You're degrading yourself. Peter, mind your words. I put the watch back in its box, handing it to Richard. Mr. Richard, I'm sorry to have involved you. You should leave now. Miss Stella, you. He gave me a deep look, then said, contact me anytime if you need anything. I was grateful for his respect. Peter looked at me, still wearing that expression of lingering anger. Stella, who was that guy? I sighed, telling him, I saw your engagement video. Peter's face showed a brief moment of panic. Like he'd been caught doing something wrong. How strange, he chased me away himself, yet feared me knowing. It was nice, I smiled at him. I wish you happiness. Don't come back. Impossible. Peter retorted, his voice sharp, startling even himself. Stella, Peter softened his tone, please wait for me. When he said that, a chill swept over me. There it was again. The last time he asked me to wait, it turned into 7 years of nightmares. And now he dared to ask again. What did you say? I felt my teeth chattering. Stella, I haven't figured it out yet, Peter said to me. After you left, it felt like something was missing. Please wait until I sort it out. In the meantime, don't be with anyone else, okay? He said it so confidently, assuming I'd always agree. The absurdity was almost drowning me. He cuddles with other women every night, got engaged with someone else in the morning, and showed up at my place by afternoon, asking me to wait till he's sure about us. Why should I? What am I, some kind of secret lover? Why do you think I'd agree to this? I asked him incredulously. You've got someone else by your side now and yet you want to keep me on hold, Peter, how can you be so selfish? But you don't have a new boyfriend either. Peter seemed utterly confused as to why I was upset, with a hint of bewilderment. If I decide I'm still into you, we can continue being together. And if I end up liking someone else, then you can find another person, right? I blurted without thinking, who says I don't have anyone? Peter instantly bristled like a porcupine, asking me suspiciously. Who is it? He paused, seemingly recalling something, and broke into a sinister grin. That guy from earlier? Stella, you never notice cars, couldn't possibly recognize what kind of car he drove away in earlier, right? A Maybach. There was a subtle malice in his expression. Do you think a man who drives a Maybach would even notice you? An overwhelming sense of humiliation nearly drowned me. Is this the man I've been so in love with all this time? I nearly lost it with anger. I shoved him hard, screaming, "Get out! I don't want to see you." Peter, pushed and shoved out the door by me, seemed oddly happy. He said, "Stella, I'll come looking for you again." Sure enough, he kept showing up at my shop. That's just his nature, the more he can't have something, the more he's interested. But I just found it absurd. After blocking him on all contacts and calls, Peter changed tactics and started sending massive bouquets of roses daily. God knows, even during our relationship, it was only in the early years that he'd give me flowers. Later on, when he was bringing people home, he considered me a nuisance. How could he still be sending flowers? The daily flowers were troubling. Even the auntie from the neighboring shop couldn't help but tease me. Stella, is something good happening soon? Gonna treat me to a drink, right? A dull ache throbbed in a numb corner of my heart. I held the roses and threw them in the nearby trash. I'm done with him. Auntie widened her eyes, sighing softly afterward, opening her arms to hug me. Stella, it's all right. If you want to cry, just cry. Since my parents passed away, I've been looked after by the neighbors. Auntie never approved of me and Peter, but she never said much, only subtly reminded me to protect myself when I decided to move in with Peter. But back then, my world revolved around Peter, ignoring her well-intentioned advice. What did Peter say at that time? He had just started his business, full of ambition. We rented a place together, and he spun me around in the house, loudly declaring, "Stella, I'll buy you a big villa one day. When my business succeeds, I'll marry you in style." Actually, I wanted to say back then, I didn't care for a grand wedding. To me, just having a home to share with someone I love is enough. Looking back now, even in our happiest times together, we couldn't step into marriage. Where would a someday even exist? It was another stormy afternoon. G-City's climate was hot and humid. The air was uncomfortably stuffy. The door curtain was pushed open again. Before I could say anything, a slap landed hard on my face. "You shameless hussy." I was too stunned by the slap to react immediately. "What are you doing?" "I'm hitting you." The girl across from me was aggressive, raising her hand to strike me again. I finally dodged it. Her face seemed familiar, and upon closer look, realized it was Peter's fiancée, the pampered young lady. "Peter and I are engaged, and you're still trying to lure him. Don't you have any shame?" She resembled a spoiled Persian cat, demanding satisfaction for the slightest discomfort. I didn't. I just felt exhausted. "Your issues have nothing to do with me." "Nothing to do with you?" She sneered. "So, your name's Stella, right? I know you're not over Peter after the breakup, using tricks to pull him back, making him send you flowers every day. Have some decency." She burst into laughter. "Oh, I forgot. How would someone parentless like you know about decency? Or should I go out there and spread it, let people know you're a homewrecker, huh? Don't you dare insult my parents. My parents are a sacred topic for me. I won't allow anyone to defame them. I just couldn't take it anymore, miss, watch your words. After breaking up with Peter, I blocked him. If you and he are having issues, that's your problem. Don't throw a fit with me. Throwing a fit? She seemed to have heard a hilarious joke. Can't believe sluts are so brazen these days. Fine, let me show you what a fit looks like. With shifty eyes, she took off her watch and smashed it onto the glass counter. I'll accuse you of theft. These were all real diamonds, and now they're fake because of you. People. She cast a disgusted glance at my shop, waving for her minions to come destroy it. I was furious beyond belief. This is the last thing my parents left me. You can't. Stop smashing it. That display case was handmade by my dad. It has little cats I naively scratched on, the toolkit from my grandpa, even the chair cover my mom stitched. These are the only things my departed family left me. And now they were all in ruins. The girl continued laughing madly, directing her minions to trash my shop. I called the police. When they came, they took both of us in, but I didn't expect that she'd get bailed out not long after. I was left alone in there. The officer told me, she's accusing you of stealing diamonds. She smashed my store. The officer sighed. Her family's lawyer is already outside, offering to discuss your shop incident, but she insists you better find a lawyer. The other family has money. You're a young girl, and you might end up with a theft record. I got the hint in his words. A sense of helplessness and absurdity almost overwhelmed me. I've been the victim from start to finish, so why am I the one who might get locked up? That girl got bailed out quickly, and before leaving, she deliberately flaunted it in front of me. She threw me the middle finger with a smirk and mouthed, "Bitch, you wanna mess with me?" I had no idea whom else I could call. After graduation, I lost touch with most of my classmates. I didn't have many friends, and my neighbors weren't people with any influence either. After hesitating for a long time, I called Richard. I was really sorry, but I didn't know who else to ask for help. I gritted my teeth, finding it so hard to put into words. I've been detained. Can you bail me out? I'll pay you back. What happened? Are you okay? Richard was obviously shocked on the other end. I could hear him standing up. Hang on, I'll be right there. He didn't ask why. Sorry, did I disturb you? I asked. It's fine. Richard's voice was a little breathless, like he was getting dressed to head out. He paused and said, "Don't be scared, I'll be there soon." The tears I'd been holding back finally flowed. I've always been this way, alone. I thought after having Peter, I wouldn't be lonely anymore. But in a short 7 years from a loving relationship to a bitter end, I ended up alone again. Richard arrived quickly. He took me out of the holding place, and I was trembling all over. The people inside, their scrutinizing gazes made me shudder. I've always been cautious, law-abiding. The only slip-up in my life was Peter, so why was I being humiliated like this? He looked at me, sighed, and draped his jacket over my shoulders. Don't worry, it's all over now. He didn't ask much, which relieved me because I didn't know how to explain it. What could I say? That I was abandoned by someone I misjudged, then accused and beaten by the person who wanted my place? Richard drove himself today, and we remained silent on the way back. I saw how tightly his lips were pressed. When he parked outside my building, he said, "Stella, there's something I should tell you." What? I was a bit lost. That girl who hit you, she's my distant cousin, named Amy. My hand froze in the middle of unbuckling my seatbelt. An overwhelming absurdity washed over me. I felt like a ridiculous clown. How laughable, those I sought help from, the one who saved me, the one who humiliated me, they were all family in the end. The atmosphere in the car was frighteningly tense. I should go. But a hand suddenly held mine. Stella, I promise you, I hardly know her. Richard sighed. I only found out when I had someone look into what happened to you on my way here. I'm really sorry. I know I shouldn't pry into your privacy, but I needed to understand what was going on before helping you. He had every right to be cautious helping someone he didn't really know. But that didn't ease the humiliation one bit. This has nothing to do with you. I tried to pull my hand away, forcing a smile. It's my fault for reading people wrong. Even without your cousin, there would have been someone else. Stop smiling, he sighed. You look worse smiling than you do crying. I'll have a word with Amy about this, and the compensation will be fair. But what, you hope I don't press charges? I wiped the tears from my face and straightened up. But why? Why is it that she could steal my boyfriend, trash my shop, accuse me, send me to the police station while I had to beg for bail, and face no punishment? Just because of power and influence, does that mean the perpetrator gets a pass, and the victim must bow down? Richard looked at me in silence. I suddenly felt deflated. Arguing about what's right or wrong with him, what's the point? Would he punish his own cousin for a stranger? Even if they were willing to compensate fully and keep me record-free, that'd be going above and beyond. Already people like us, in their eyes, we don't count for much. He probably helped me just for his cousin's sake. I turned to leave, but he still held my hand. Let go. I won't press charges. A suffocating feeling spread in my chest, and I tried to suppress the urge to cry. No, he let go of my hand, and earnestly said, Amy's family has power. Even if you win for a moment, they'd find ways to make your life difficult afterward. Knowing that was precisely why I felt hopeless. I got it. I opened the car door and got out. Do you have anything else to say to me? Richard asked from behind. I was silent for a long time. Don't come over anymore. After a while, he sighed. Okay. When I went up and turned on the window light, I saw Richard's car still parked below. The glow of a cigarette tip flickered in the dark. Seeing my light on, he waved, gesturing for me to go rest. Not long after, my phone buzzed. Richard had texted, Don't be scared, it's over now. A little later, he sent another one, If you need anything, you can call me. I transferred the bail money to him and then deleted him from my contacts. Leaning against the wall, I slowly slid to the floor, tears streaming down my face. The sense of powerlessness nearly crushed me. What else could I do? The compensation arrived quickly. Miss Amy, of course, wasn't lacking money. Her social media was still all happy and carefree. A stray kitten could evoke her sympathy. You'd never think she brazenly ordered her lackeys to destroy innocent people's shops. That's just how the world is. Even after Amy paid for the shop being wrecked, things just couldn't be put back together. Peter found out 3 days later. The shop was still under renovation, and he showed up at my house. Stella, listen to me. He was banging on the door. I didn't want to deal with it, but he was so loud that the neighbors were about to call the cops and even called me. Miss Stella, what's up with the guy outside? My kids need to study. I kept apologizing, sighing inside. I must have owed him a ton in a past life. Don't come around, I said through the door. Peter, please just let me go. Stella, open the door. But I didn't want to see him anymore. He just brought me disappointment and heartache. But he started to defend himself. Just listen, Peter went quiet. Peter, we were together 7 years. I don't think I ever wronged you, but what about you? You emotionally withdrew from me, treated me like furniture, and eventually brought another woman home? Stella, why didn't you leave? I asked, completely at a loss. Clenching my teeth, I paused a bit to push down the sudden suffocating feeling. You are picky and demanding. I learned to cook what you liked, managed everything because you were tired from work. Everything I did for you, you took for granted, but I was not obligated to do any of it for you. I know your parents don't like me, constantly talking bad about me to you. You could have just been honest. If you were tired of me, why not just say so? Breaking up should have been simple, right? Why bring someone home to humiliate me? Peter went silent for a long moment. Stella, I just wasn't sure. See, even now, he's selfish, wanting it all. It hurts so much, I ended up laughing. So, now you're sure? You're engaged now. If you at least have some sense of responsibility as a man, return to your fiancée and leave me alone. If you don't come around, she won't bother me either. I've known it all along. Peter was always the root of this mess. If it wasn't Amy, there would have been someone else. Stella, can't we at least be friends? He said in that whiny voice I was so used to. I don't want to be friends. And don't call me Stella, we're nothing to each other now. My heart ached with every beat, almost stopping me from speaking. Yet Peter noticed, mockingly asking, you still love me, don't you? I told him, I won't. If you have any gratitude for what I did for you, don't come here again. Peter left. I realized he just wanted to see if I still had feelings for him. Once confirmed, he left satisfied. I went on with running my small shop. Life was calm and peaceful. One day, I noticed I hadn't thought about Peter for a while. That was good. We were never really from the same world anyway. But suddenly, I started getting a lot of watch repair orders. Some looked like they were intentionally damaged. The people bringing them in were well-dressed, not like they really cared about the watches. They were too quick to pay up. They brought the watches like they were handing over explosives. I knew Richard was trying to look out for my business. It wasn't needed. I had already said I wouldn't sue Amy. Somehow it seemed Richard might come from a wealthy family, but I've grown wary of dealing with these so-called elites. To them, these might be trivial, but I have no heart left to break. When a third diamond-studded watch came in, I sighed, and told the young guy bringing it in. Is Mr. Richard having you deliver these? Please tell him there's no need to go out of his way to support my business. The young man was startled at first, then blushed. No, nothing about Richard, I don't know him at all. Your watch, I pointed to the watch's strap, was clearly yanked with force. Did you hurt your hand? The guy instinctively hid his hands behind him. No, no. I sighed. Show me your hand. I can already see it. He reluctantly showed his hand, a gash clearly across his index finger. His face turned crimson, stubbornly muttering it was an accident. How cute, I couldn't help but laugh. The last young and cute guy I knew like that was a 17-year-old Peter. But sadly, no one stays 17 forever. We can't ever go back since the thing with Amy. I had installed a camera at my workstation, recording everything. While fixing the watch, that young guy came back, hesitantly. Stella. Tony, what are you doing here again? I was exasperated. I told you to tell Richard not to try sending business my way anymore. I honestly don't want to owe any of those people any favors. I'm not here for that, Tony insisted. I like being here, it's so peaceful. I pointed to the wall clock. It's Monday afternoon, 3:32 p.m. As a high schooler, you should be in class. It doesn't matter, I'm going abroad anyway, so what's the point of exams? Tony shrugged it off. I sighed. But you're gonna get me in trouble doing this. Tony instantly looked like a downcast golden retriever, then raised his hand as if swearing, I promise I won't cause you any trouble. Just let me stay for a bit, he pleaded. My parents don't care about me at all, the house is always chaotic, I just like being here, it's quiet. He's told me about his family. His parents do their own thing, a marriage for business, with the house either hosting parties or eerily empty except for the maids. I don't really get these rich folks' problems. But he kept begging, looking all pitiful, and eventually, I gave in. Only once a week, no more. It was another rainy afternoon. Tony skipped school again and crashed at my place until someone came in, banging the door open. Amy strutted in, looking disgusted. You again? Couldn't hook up with Peter, so now you're after little boys? Really? I turned to see Tony, his face pale as a sheet. What the heck is going on? Why aren't you in school? Amy snapped at Tony. What's it got to do with you? Tony instinctively shielded me. Amy, wickedly amused, said, Fine, I'll tell Aunt and Uncle what you do every day, sneaking around with this. I couldn't believe my ears. Aunt? Uncle? Why is it always his family's people? Take Tony back. He tried to explain in a rush, Stella, it's not me. Stella? Amy acted like she'd heard a joke. Tony, listen up. Your so-called Stella here is a home-wrecking hussy, meddling between me and your future brother-in-law. You want to defend her? Confusion and shock were all over his young face. Didn't you know? Amy smirked with malice. She's clever all right, even with our engagement, she's still stringing your bro-in-law along with roses every day. Shut up. I snarled, disgusted by her lies. I'm the girlfriend, been with Peter for 7 years. Amy had never been talked back to like that before, her cheeks bright red, she raised her hand to slap me. Just as her hand flew toward me, it was stopped by someone from behind. Amy, that's too much. It was Richard, soaking wet, with anger etched on his face. Let me go. Amy hesitated, then switched to a soft, innocent tone, pointing at me and whining to Richard, she's pulling Tony away. He's skipping school to see her, I'm setting this right for Aunt and Uncle. This isn't your business. Richard shook her off, nearly knocking her off balance, leaving her in disbelief staring at him. You pushed me? Her voice went shrill, you're siding with this tramp against me? You know what you've done. Richard's expression was furious and dark, take your people and leave. Tony wanted to speak, but you should go back to school. Neither Amy nor Tony dared disobey him. They left, defeated. But I saw Amy's look back at me, brimming with resentment. She's not going to let it go. You all right? Richard asked. I shook my head, weary, refusing his offered hand. I didn't think it would come to this, Richard murmured, I got here as fast as I could. His drenched suit hinted he hadn't bothered with an umbrella, rushing to stop Amy's slap just in time. What do you all want? I asked, half defeated. I know I can't fight against you rich folks, I've got nothing left, why won't you just leave me alone? It's not like that. For the first time, Richard seemed unsure. Stella, I mean no harm, he sighed, trust me, I've got nothing to do with Amy's mess. I'm not nice to everyone, only you. He paused, from the first time I met you, I just wanted to take care of you. I shook my head, I'm not interested in playing these love games with you people. You've got plenty of choices, leave me out of it. Stella, you don't know how special you are. Richard smiled for the first time. The moment I saw you, I noticed a rare piece about you. Tony really likes it here too. Initially, he was only delivering watches for me, but later he told me he really likes it here, feels like home. I'll explain to Aunt and Uncle. Richard paused thoughtfully, carefully asking, Stella, could you give me a chance? Sorry, I know my place. Rich folks like them, wealthy and good-looking, they can have any woman. Why pick someone as ordinary as me? I've already been burned once with Peter, not going down that road again. Back at home, I got a message from Tony. Stella, I'm sorry, I didn't know she'd come. I'll explain it to my parents. He rambled on a bit, then cautiously asked, Stella, can I still visit sometimes? I let out a long sigh, setting the phone aside. Outside my complex, the street lights were out on a deserted stretch. There'd been several muggings lately against lone women walking home at night. Unfortunately, I got stuck at work and was extra late. An uneasy feeling crept in as I walked alone. Then I heard footsteps behind me, getting quicker and closer. Fear gripped me, turning around to see a middle-aged man with a nasty grin sprinting toward me. Something flashed in his hand, it looked like a knife. I bolted, screaming for help. Save me. But there wasn't a soul around. The footsteps behind me kept getting closer. I could almost hear the heavy breathing of the man chasing me. Don't run, sweetheart, he yelled, come play with me. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to leap out of my throat. I was running so hard there was a metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Gritting my teeth, I threw my bag behind me without looking. Take the bag. Just stop chasing me. But the footsteps didn't stop. They got even closer. He wasn't after my money. Why are you running? His hand grabbed my shoulder, his breath reeked. Isn't it lonely being all by yourself? Let me show you a good time. He yanked my hair and started dragging me to the corner. I struggled, screaming in pain. Shut up. He slapped me hard across the face. It felt like my head had been hit by a truck. Stars danced in front of my eyes, and my mouth was filled with the salty taste of blood. I could feel a couple of my teeth had been knocked loose. My tongue was cut, making my words slur. I can give you money, please let me go. I was shaking all over. I won't call the cops, I swear, I can give you money. He laughed, grabbing my hair and forcing me to look at him. You've pissed someone off. Money won't help now. Then he ripped my clothes. I screamed and instinctively kicked out, making him shout in pain. Bitch! How dare you! He yanked my leg hard, making me fall to the ground. I tried to kick him between the legs, but he caught my move. I watched him get closer, backing away on instinct. He spat to the side, tossed aside the torn fabric in his hand, and lunged at me. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. Then just as his disgusting hand was about to grab me, a figure suddenly appeared, punching the man hard. It was Richard. Call the police. He shouted sternly. I was in shock and instinctively reached for my phone to call the cops. My hands were shaking so badly it took a few seconds to dial the number. After giving as many details as I could, I clutched the phone, staying put until the police arrived. But what was Richard doing here? Where was his driver? The two men were fighting it out, and Richard was losing. I saw the man's eyes flash with menace, and he pulled a knife from his waist. Watch out. There was a sickening sound of a blade piercing flesh. Richard moaned in pain, but he fought back fiercely, holding the man's hand tightly. Run! He urged. Knowing I'd only make things worse by staying, I gritted my teeth and ran barefoot towards the apartment security. I'll get help. Behind me, I heard the struggle continue. The grunts and punches landing made my heart ache. My foot got cut on something. It was a sharp, stabbing pain. I kept running, calling for help. Finally, someone answered like music to my ears. What's wrong? Help. Someone's been attacked. The attacker saw the tide turning and ran off. When I returned with help, Richard was the only one on the ground. He was clutching his abdomen, blood pooling around him. Call an ambulance, someone's hurt. I didn't know if I could move him. Kneeling by his side, trembling, unsure where to touch Richard, are you okay? His eyes were shut, his face pale as a ghost. I pressed down on his wound, and those 20 minutes waiting for the ambulance were the longest of my life. It wasn't until he was loaded into the ambulance and taken to the OR that I collapsed into a chair, covering my face with my hands. Richard's family arrived soon after. I expected them to blame me, but his parents were incredibly understanding. His mom even comforted me, wrapping a thin blanket around me. It's all right, he's tough. And protecting a girl is the right thing to do. I was taken aback. You know me? She exchanged a look with Richard's dad and smiled. Of course, my watch was repaired by you. Richard told me about you. Not many young women like you, patient and kind, are around these days. She murmured softly to someone else. A moment later, she took my hand and offered me a pair of soft slippers and a bag. Go freshen up, we opened the suite over there. Take care of your wounds. No. Rushi stood up, feeling awkward, finally realizing how messy I looked. His mom was gentle and kind, but I felt horrible causing their only son to end up in surgery. While she kept an eye on me, she couldn't help glancing at the operating room. No mother wouldn't worry for her child. In the shower, I glanced at the disheveled woman in the mirror. Compared to the well-dressed, elite group outside, I felt like an ugly duckling among a flock of swans. Richard spent the night in ICU. People tried to persuade his parents to rest, but they were stubborn, urging me to rest instead. I couldn't leave though. I couldn't do much, there were plenty of their family around, so even helping with simple tasks was out of the question. I sat on the bench alone, watching the hustle and bustle. listening to people whisper and feel their judgmental glances. I slowly buried my face in my hands. Then someone sat next to me. Stella, I looked up to see Tony's concerned face. Are you okay? He handed me a cup of warm milk, heard about it, and came right away. Don't worry, I asked around, Richard should be fine. I rubbed my cheeks, trying to wake up, forcing a smile. Really? That's good. Stop smiling, you look worse than crying, he sighed. They caught the guy who attacked with the knife, don't be afraid. What about? I trailed off. Don't worry, she won't come, Tony answered firmly. After what happened, my brother went home and really laid into the family. He glanced around cautiously and cut off several deals with the other side, saying he wanted to give them a lesson. I heard that Peter's side got warned too. My heart skipped a beat when I heard that. When Richard was wheeled out of the operating room, it was already late at night. A group of people surrounded him, all shouting different things. I couldn't see anything from the outside and had to wait by the room door. The crowd was filled with people who were either wealthy or influential. The nurses came over multiple times to ask them to leave, but no one moved until Richard's parents kicked everyone out. Then Richard's mom came over and touched my hand. Stella, don't worry, the kid's fine. But it took so long for him to come out, I thought she was just trying to reassure me. You and Richard's dad should rest, I'll stay with him tonight. No need, you should rest, we have caretakers, Richard's mom laughed and winked at me. It took a while because they also removed his appendix and checked his intestines for any more inflammation. I couldn't help but find it amusing. Though they said it wasn't anything serious, I insisted on staying. Richard's parents exchanged a glance and finally agreed, but reminded me there were caretakers too, so I just needed to watch. Even though they said it was nothing major, Richard was still stabbed. His face looked pale. The 4 drips steadily flowed into his vein, feeling cold to the touch. He furrowed his brows slightly, looking uncomfortable. I found a hot water bag to place under his hand, and it wasn't long before he visibly relaxed. I couldn't help but chuckle. Stripped of his usual intimidating demeanor, you could see another side of him when he was vulnerable like this. But why did you work so hard to save me? Was it worth it? I was dozing off, supporting my head, when I felt someone gently touch my hand. Startled, I glanced at the 4 bag, thinking it was empty. But the drip was still steady. I looked down and saw Richard looking up at me. He still looked tired, but he gave me a genuine smile. Stella, I'm so glad you're okay. Since Richard got hospitalized because of me, it was only right to take care of him. I wasn't sure what he told his parents, but they only agreed to transfer me to a private hospital and wouldn't let me return to my place alone. I didn't want to trouble them. There's no reason to worry the people you're trying to take care of. But Richard's mom, full of concern, pulled me aside. Stella, they haven't caught the person who attacked Richard yet. We wouldn't feel safe if you went back alone. Would it be okay for you to stay at our apartment near the hospital? We'd feel much better until they catch the attacker. Her voice was gentle, sincere. I couldn't refuse while looking into her smiling eyes. I thought about it and said, all right, okay. Behind her, Richard blinked at me and quickly looked away when I glanced his way, like an innocent dog. He really knows how to win me over. The private hospital's environment was really nice. Richard's so-called hospital room could easily be called a suite. I lived simply, didn't have much to pack, and temporarily closed my shop. Once settled into the apartment, my main task became taking care of Richard. He recovered quickly thanks to his good health. When his wound was mostly healed, he told me seriously, I want to introduce a very important family member to you. For some reason, his expression seemed sneaky. Sure enough. The next day, as soon as I walked in, a huge fluffy white bundle darted at me like lightning. I froze, gripping my lunchbox, and resignedly closed my eyes. Then I heard Richard shouting breathlessly from behind, Coco. Don't jump on people. I raised my hands to shield my face. Nothing happened. When I opened my eyes, a big fluffy creature was sitting there, smiling at me. It was a Samoyed. Upon noticing my gaze, the Samoyed wagged its tail rapidly as Richard hobbled over, holding his stomach, and introduced us earnestly. This is Coco, the Samoyed I've raised since childhood. He's like my brother. While I was in the hospital, he nearly tore the house apart and had to be brought here. He looked at me expectantly. You don't mind, do you? Not at all. I was thrilled and crouched down to pet Coco, then got a face full of affectionate licks. I wanted to pet him some more, but Coco circled me, sniffing, then sat down and barked several times. I gave Richard a puzzled look, only to see him laugh so hard he coughed. He smells cats on you, asking where your cat is. He loves cats, just like me. He added softly. Once Coco and Bella got acquainted, Richard was walking again. Every day, the doctors told me to wheel him outside to relax. Watching the cat and dog romp in the garden, chatting with Richard under the sun, I, a person of few desires, felt a surprising sense of peace. While scrolling on my phone, I came across news that Peter and Amy's wedding was imminent, and surprisingly felt at ease knowing it. I had truly moved on. The day before Richard was discharged was my birthday. A few days ago, I noticed him acting sneaky, keeping his distance. I thought it was something business-related, so I avoided taking his calls. But when my birthday rolled around, I walked in to find Richard, the CEO, dressed to the nines, extending a polite hand toward me. Today is the lovely Stella's birthday. May I have the pleasure of celebrating it with you? He asked, quickly adding, just to thank you for taking care of me during this time. Trying to cut me off before I declined. Next to him was Coco, also wearing a crown and wagging its tail furiously. Behind him, Richard's parents were sitting there, all smiles. Stella, you've worked so hard. Richard's mom gently took my hand, her eyes filled with sympathy. It's about time this rascal did something for you. We've got the household covered, so have fun with him today. Don't worry about anything, just put him to work. She turned and lightly scolded Richard. Today, your job is to make Stella happy. Only one pet can stay at home, see if you and Coco both get to. She is so different from Peter's mom. I could tell she was sincere, which just made me feel even more overwhelmed. Since my parents passed, Peter's gotten colder every year. That last year, well, I don't even want to talk about it. It's been so long since someone told me, Stella, your birthday matters, let's celebrate it properly. Richard drove us, and his parents waved from outside the car when we left. Happy birthday, Stella. I was a bit taken aback. Richard glanced over and grinned, don't worry. They genuinely like you. You shouldn't feel pressured by it. Stella, you deserve all the wonderful things. I sat stunned in the passenger seat, covering my face, trying hard not to let tears fall. It's been a year full of challenges and I thought I was tough enough. Yet, when someone asks you genuinely, how are you, that's all it takes for me to crumble. Richard handed me a handkerchief without a word, then started the car. Everything's planned by me today, Stella. Just focus on having fun. He's always so considerate, carrying that old-school chivalry vibe. I went silent for a moment. Bella? He assured me, Bella is playing at my place with Coco. Don't worry, she's in good hands. Honestly, he didn't have to be so thoughtful about everything that concerns me. Didn't expect Richard would take me to an antique watch exhibition. My eyes lit up at those exquisite antique watches. Having worked in restoration for so long, I truly love these old pieces. They all feel like they're filled with the arcs of time. Until someone politely stopped me. Is it Ms. Stella? I nodded a bit dazed. Then I saw him, Thomas, the Swiss watchmaker I had long admired. The white-haired gentleman was smiling at me, speaking in words I didn't understand. I looked to Richard for help and saw him stifling a smile, then translating. Ms. Stella, I've seen how you restored Richard's watch. You've got a real talent. Would you like to study under me, learn the craft of watchmaking? I turned to him, shocked. Stella, would you? But suddenly a cake hits my head, leaving me completely flustered. Ms. Stella can think about it, Thomas said, I'll be around for a month. If you change your mind, Richard knows where to find me. There was sincerity in his eyes. He told me, Ms. Stella, you truly have a gift. After he left, I stood there for a while before asking Richard, did you arrange this? How did you know I admire Master Thomas? The images of the watches you look at the most in your shop, they're all his, Richard chuckled. Don't worry, he didn't extend the offer because of me. He saw your restored watch. I was confused, isn't it just a standard watch? No, he shook his head, it was custom-made for my parents, disguised to look like a standard model. But the mechanics inside were redesigned. The master was very curious how you made two seemingly identical but internally different watches run normally. I instantly blushed. Richard smiled at me. Stella, see? You're more amazing than you think. Don't sell yourself short. You're the best. I blushed. Suddenly, a small hope sparked in my heart. Is it possible? That one day I could craft watches like the master? Ones that last through time? But I didn't expect our last stop to be my shop. What was once trashed by Amy was now completely restored. I was so surprised I couldn't even speak. I turned around and found Richard holding a big bouquet of roses, looking both nervous and shy. Stella, I like you. Would you be my girlfriend? I was moved, but in the end, I shook my head. I know we're just different people. I once loved Peter, poured almost all my passion and love into that relationship. Only to get betrayal in return. You're great, I smiled at him, tears brimming, I'm the one who's not worthy. Once he's better, we're supposed to go back to our separate worlds. But Richard told me, Stella, don't be afraid. I can wait until you're sure. The past will eventually pass. You need to look forward. But I'm scared to hope for the future. Richard didn't give up. He came around so often that the neighbors started teasing me. Stella, is something good about to happen? They told me about those days at the flower shop. During that time you looked after Richard. Someone sent roses on schedule for a while. Your ex showed up a couple of times, then stopped. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. Peter still acts like an immature kid, doing everything based on his whims. With me, it's just like he's upset that his toy got taken away. Now that he's stopped coming around, I actually feel relieved. I went to Switzerland. Before that, I took a year to learn the language. I insisted on paying for my study abroad myself. Switzerland is a quiet and beautiful country. I rented a place not far from the base of a mountain. When I open the door, I see a green lake, crisp air, white swans, and some not-so-friendly wild ducks. Immersed in the world of machinery all day, I feel an unprecedented peace. Thomas praises how quickly I learn. But I know it's because I genuinely love what I'm doing. Richard visits me now and then. Once, he saw me getting splashed by the ducks. He laughed as he handed me a handkerchief. Even the ducks bully you? He asked. I was troubled, no idea. Maybe it's because I somehow want to roast them in my mind? Away from home, Richard and I could chat easily, like old friends. But then again, not really. There's always that sheet of paper waiting to be broken. Walking by the lake, he asked, isn't your competition about to start? He meant a prestigious watchmaking competition in Switzerland. Winning the gold basically means having a huge stepping stone in the industry. After years of relentless hard work, Thomas and his team acknowledged me. They recommended me for this year's competition. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air travel through my lungs. Yeah, I've been prepping for this for 3 solid years. Feeling confident? He questioned. Wait for the good news. I'm full of confidence, I replied. This journey had countless all-nighters, numerous intricate touches, and countless sparks of inspiration. It was my dream come to life. I had to make it shine. Stella, you're more brilliant now than ever, Richard genuinely remarked. I was always brilliant, I teased, offering my hand. Mr. Smith, you're cordially invited to witness the competition in 3 days. He took my hand with a smile. It would be my honor. I became the first woman to win the gold in that competition. As the announcement was made, the applause was thunderous. Richard approached with roses, handed them to me in front of everyone, and gently kissed my hand. "Stella, would you be my girlfriend?" The applause erupted again, along with a few whistles. Face flushed, I nodded. Richard was practically overjoyed. Beneath the spotlight, his gentle features seemed to glow. I'd never seen him so excited. Eventually, he calmed down, intending to step off the stage, but I pulled him back. Handing him the winning watch, I pointed out the finely carved RS on the back. Richard's eyes lit up, he embraced me tightly. "Stella. My Stella. I'm so happy." Thomas clapped vigorously on the side. "Well done, Richard. You've finally won her over." He held significant authority in the industry. With his lead, everyone else joined the celebration, even reporters snapped pictures. Embarrassed, I stomped on Richard's foot, hinting at him to keep cool. He quickly released me and apologized. The place was filled with good-natured laughter. Richard moved closer, his face inches from mine. I closed my eyes as cheers amplified. In the glory of my crowning moment, I found love. When I returned home, I had gained some fame and started my studio. My relationship with Richard grew steadily. His family was wonderful. Everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction, except for me repeatedly turning down Richard's marriage proposals. I heard his mom gave him quite the scolding. When he proposed for the 10th time, I accepted. He let out a huge sigh of relief. "If you hadn't said yes, Coco might have been too old to bring the ring," he joked, earning a stern look from his mom. "Don't be silly. Coco will always be the cutest pup, right?" She doted. At this point, my chubby cat wandered over, and his mom was instantly charmed. "Oh, our Bella is the cutest kitty." Richard held my hand, and I looked up at him. We shared a smile. "Thank you for bringing warmth and hope into my life. Thank you for giving me true happiness." Much later, I received a letter from Peter. "Stella, I used to think anything in this world could leave me, except you. I thought you were dull, but later realized you were like air to my life. Without you, everything felt suffocating." I didn't read further and tossed it in the trash. Richard, stepping out of the shower, looked confused. "Why'd you throw it away?" "Just spam mail," I smiled back. Rumor has it, Peter's marriage wasn't happy, full of tension, and his NASDAQ bell ringing kept getting delayed. He tried reaching out to me again, but an enraged Richard sent him away, costing him 2 business deals. I'd never seen Richard that mad before. Like they say, you have to respect yourself first to be respected by others. I deserve the best.